Two guys either side of 50 with one dream to achieve middle-aged sporting glory. This is the Missing Links Golf Show. Andy Walker, Pilgrims, episode 51 of the Missing Links Golf Show. How are you doing there, my good friend?
Very well, very well. I feel aligned in this episode, given the episode number and my age are the same.
I was wondering where you were going with that. Um, thought aligned. What's the Adidas three stripes on your sleeve, or
No,
what do you?
no,
Okay, 51.
no,
Nice,
no.
nice. Pilgrims, we've got an interesting one for you today. We do have a guest, special guest on the show, which I'm looking forward to meeting this guy in semi-person, in virtual person. We've met only via email at this point, but another pilgrim that reached out to us with an interesting story. So, yeah, this is a bit different, Andy Walker.
Yeah, look, and I've obviously read Joel's email, and he is on on a similar journey, but obviously with his own sort of characteristics to it, and hasn't been playing the game that long, which we'll find out. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to catching up with him just to see where he's at and a bit more about what he's about.
Yeah, so to cut through the suspense, Pilgrims, this was the email that we received a little while ago now, and it says this. It says, "Hi, Steve and Andy. Hope you're both doing well." Well, we are. Thank you, Joel. Thanks for asking. He says, "First things first, I know the show has a keen interest in the variances in regional greetings. So just to be clear, I'm emailing from the UK, but I chose hi simply because it seemed appropriate in this context, as opposed to it being reflective of my nation's wider preferences." Good to know.
Yep.
Good to know. I'm not sure what the nation's wider preferences might be.
Is it a more formal hello, do you think?
Maybe, maybe, maybe. I don't know. He goes on to say, "I came across your podcast a couple of months ago and I've thoroughly enjoyed it." Well, that's good to know. He says, "I couldn't believe how closely the premise aligned with a goal I recently set in my own life. And I've since gone through the whole back catalogue to get the full context of your journey. I mean, sorry, your pilgrimage, obviously."
Yes.
Nice. He says, "I only took up golf last year, but it's fair to say that the bug bit me extremely hard, almost immediately. So hard, in fact, that earlier this year I decided to target an achievement which, as I say, definitely resembles the premise of your show, if it were on steroids, and probably entirely delusional as opposed to just aspirational." Well, this is interesting. He says, "In order to track my progress and hold myself accountable, I set up a blog called Golf Life Crisis." I think that name probably says a fair bit.
Yep.
The episode in which you discussed a query from a pilgrim about whether the Missing Links was a midlife crisis vehicle also rang extremely loud in my ears. I'm only 38, so not totally sure if this qualifies as midlife. I don't think it does.
No.
But I'm not going to deny that it is a crisis. And then he says, "I've decided to try and qualify for the Legends Tour after I turn 50.
Ooh.
So effectively, I've given myself 13 years to go from taking up golf to qualifying for a professional tour. Stranger things have happened. I keep telling myself, at least I think they have. Anyway, just wanted to drop a note to say keep up the good work and that you've got a comrade in arms over here in the UK who's on a similar pilgrimage, just a decade or so behind you guys. Keep rocking out, gents."
Yeah.
Joel. I don't think he
I-
needs to labour the point about being a decade behind, but
it wasn't just a decade, it was a decade or so.
Yeah. Thanks, Joel.
I mean, look, it is accurate.
Yeah, I
But
know. It's a fair point.
you know,
He's only 38. He's a
yeah,
spring chicken.
yeah, young bloke.
Yeah. So, look, let's get Joel on the show and hear all about it. It's enough of us talking about him. Let's get the man himself on and hear about his pilgrimage. What do you
Yeah,
think,
looking
Andy
forward to
Walker?
chatting to him.
All right, let's do it. Joel Gregory, welcome to the Missing Links Golf Show. It's amazing to have you.
Good morning slash evening, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Yes. Morning your time, late afternoon, early evening our time. Andy Walker. It's a Friday that we're doing this recording, which is somewhat unusual. So, yeah, looking forward to a Friday evening beverage at some point as well, I think.
Yeah, I can see that happening this evening at some point. I mean, yeah, Fridays is an unusual day for us. We're normally earlier in the week, and either first thing in the morning or later in the evening. But yeah, it's a refreshing
It's
change,
okay.
I think,
It's
to
okay.
have a late afternoon chat.
Af- After 50 episodes, and Joel, for your information, this is episode 51. Okay. So I feel like we've embarked upon a new part of the show. But that's a story for another day. I think since we've got you online for the Pilgrims, obviously we've given them a little bit of a flavour of how we got in contact during the intro. But maybe for the benefit of all of the Pilgrims, who are you? What do you do? Why have we got you on the show? What's your story?
Sure. Well, I mean, only you can answer the latter question, I suppose. But who am I? So I am Joel. I don't know if am I middle-aged yet? I'm 38, so I'm a sort of
No, no, very
approaching.
young,
No, okay.
very young, very
Okay,
young.
fine. I'm
Yeah,
a
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah,
young.
young bloke.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm a young bloke
yeah.
who took up golf only about, well, less than a year and a half ago. So I'm a new golfer, and as you probably described in the intro, and hopefully as people will see if they can go to the site that I've set up, I've embarked on a probably slightly mad, definitely very ambitious goal with my golf. So not content to just enjoy it as a pastime, as a sort of social enterprise, all of those things. I've decided to take it to a whole other level, and I've set myself this big aspirational goal, which I'll get into. But really, my background is kind of, I live in the UK, and I have a job, I have a family, I have all those things that I know you guys talk about a lot, and that everyone
Mm,
has to sort of balance with their golfing responsibilities. But the golf bug kind of bit me very, very, very hard, very quickly, sort of out of nowhere, really. So as I say, I haven't, I'm not a long time golfer. I played sport all my life, but I'd kind of given up and played sort of amateur football for a bit and sort of put that on the shelf. And then out of the blue, last March, for my birthday, my loving partner gifted me, I say gifted, maybe cursed me with a couple of golf lessons.
awesome.
There's no real context. It was like, I think she just wanted to get me out of the house a bit or just didn't know what to get me for my birthday. And so sent, I bought you a couple of golf lessons. And we did live 60 seconds from a golf course, which I'd never even been to, just drove past it all the time. And so I went and had a couple of lessons. And on the first lesson, a sort of very cliched, clouds breaking, light shining down moment where I hit a good shot and I got that sort of feeling of, flushing a golf ball for the first time. Um, and I realized then that this was something that I think I liked. And I remember coming home and saying to my partner, "You don't know what you've done," straight after that. So it was fairly immediate. And it just sort of grew from there very, very quickly. So I had some more lessons. I didn't really go out on the course for a while. But I kept taking lessons at this club near where we were, and then I went out for my first ever round last July. And so I've gone from there to where we are now, and sort of to cut to the why we're talking perhaps is I've set myself a goal of, jeez, even saying it out loud to
You've
people
got to say
makes
it
me
out loud. You've got to say it
cringe
out loud.
inside. I
Yeah.
have set myself the goal of attempting at least to qualify for what is called the Legends Tour, which over here in the UK is the senior European tour. So I suppose the Champions Tour is like the PGA Tour equivalent. This isn't quite that standard; it's still very, very high standard of golf, and that's for golfers over 50. So I've got 12 years, a bit less now actually, sort of 11 and a half years to get from never playing golf to that standard of golf, or at least trying. So yeah, first round of golf was last July. Didn't go very well, as you might expect. But I kept going, and I've made quite a lot of progress relatively quickly, I think at least. But I'm aware that there's a hell of a lot that needs to be done. But I thought this is the kind of thing that probably needs to be laid bare for the entire world to potentially see, because I guess that's what we do nowadays with our, with our YouTube channels and our podcasts and things like that. And I thought, if nothing else, I could be a cautionary tale, or at least some sort of human guinea pig to see if such a thing is possible. And if it's not, I'll give it a good crack. So that's quite a long elevator pitch, but assuming a long enough elevator ride, that is the sort of background. And I suppose that's why we're talking today.
It's a fantastic summary. So many things jump out to me on that. The first of them is for Andy Walker. Joel talked about he got out there on day one and absolutely flushed a shot. Have you ever had that experience, Andy Walker?
I mean, I don't know about on day one, because I mean, day one for me was a very, very, very long time ago, and I do remember, and I remember the mate who actually took me out was actually down at Mollymook, where I played my junior golf. There's two golf courses down there. There's the 18 hole championship golf course, but there was also a 9 hole sort of, not a sort of pitch and putt kind of course, but it's sort of like that, and it was down on the 9 hole course. So I do remember I missed the first shot, and I hit the second one, but I don't really remember too much more than that. So I don't I don't remember flushing one, but I could have. I'd like to think I did.
See, I remember, I do remember. I would have been, I reckon, about 11. And it was over at a mate's place who lived next to a golf course, and his next door neighbor was a golfer. And so he had a couple of sets of clubs. And of course, I'm left handed, right? So it's difficult to grab clubs. But it just so happened that his wife was left handed and had a nice set of ladies' clubs, perfect for an 11-year-old. So we got out there on the course. We played 9 holes. I don't know if we really played 9 holes, but we went around the 9 hole course. But I remember hitting a 5 iron from the fairway, flushed it to the front of the green, probably 90 meters away at that point. Who's to know? And that was it. It's that feeling. So I know exactly what you're talking about there, Joel. So that is good. Another one that popped up for me was during our email exchange in setting this up. There were a couple of little Star Wars references that floated in there, and that's relevant because in your summary you talk about you want to try to make it onto the seniors tour. Well, I'm just going to channel Yoda. Do or do not. There is no try.
Sure. Well, okay. I mean, I suppose my caveating is I don't want us to come across as anything approaching kind of arrogance. I don't want people to think here's this sort of
Oh,
mad.
that ship sailed, mate. Like you.
No, because honestly, like I'm not for a minute thinking like this is easy. I'm not trying to disparage the level of golf. Like I know it's going to be hard, and we'll come to what I've learned so far. One of the things I've learned is golf is really hard.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
figured that, if I set a lofty goal, at least if I fall short of it, I'll have traveled a long way towards it. If I just want to be a good golfer, it's not that interesting. It doesn't really make for compelling, blog content either. So yeah,
sure.
I think I am definitely going to pursue this as far as I can. I've got quite a, I don't know if obsessive is the right word, but quite, if I get into something, I really want to chase it as hard as I can. And so, that's the goal here. I should clarify when I say I flushed one on my first lesson, it was just one, and it was a bit of a shambles. It was I showed up with the wrong clothes, the wrong trainers, didn't have any clubs. The pro grabbed a, sort of loan out of the display kit in the shop and just went, here, hit this. And I hit, I don't know how many, and they were mostly terrible. But the one good one was the one that I took home with me and remembered, and sort of that's the one that set me on this journey. Yeah, I think in terms of the Yoda and the Star Wars reference, I think part of the journey and the pursuit is trying to learn from other people, right? I mean, you guys have obviously been golfing a lot longer than I have, and much better golfers than I am, and are pursuing a goal and a pursuit with the podcast, which is not so wildly dissimilar, right? So I'm trying to get as much advice as I can, obviously swing advice and coaching and things like that, but talking to people, learning from people, listening, watching, absorbing anything I can to understand, how possible is this, but also learning not just the golfing skills that I'm going to need, but also the psychological skills, other people's experiences. Like I basically have to speed run this process. Like 12 years seems like a long time, but it's not really when we're
Mm,
talking about the level that I want to try to get to.
mm,
And so I know that I need to make rapid progress, or as rapid as possible. And that is one thing that golf is quite painful with, is like the amount of work you put in isn't necessarily commensurate with how much better you get, which I struggle with a lot, particularly having played other sports where typically practice more, get better. That is true with golf, but it's also not to some extent. I think you can force it. But yeah, at the moment, I'm trying to, like I say, sort of gather as much information as I can. If I can take other people's learnings and experiences, maybe I don't have to make quite as many mistakes for myself. I'm already making plenty. So the fewer the better, I think.
Yeah, look, I think the couple of things there. I think setting a big, hairy, audacious goal is not arrogant. Um, Slightly delusional, maybe, and but not arrogant. There's nothing arrogant about it. But also backing yourself as well. I mean, being able to go, yeah, this is going to be tough. This is going to be really, really hard. Um, but then backing yourself to be able to try and achieve that big, hairy, audacious goal. I think, those two things are very, very different to arrogance. And yeah, golf is a hard game. It's going to take a lot of work. But you've got to put yourself out there and you've got to back yourself.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
it's
think I mentioned the sorry, guys. I mentioned the big Herodotus goal in the post where I kind of lay out on the
mm,
blog sort of what it is I'm trying to achieve. And I know you guys love a quote, whether it's a sort of, a Mike Tyson or an Eminem quote. We've been dropping some of those over the episodes, things like that. And one that I'm trying to sort of provide solace to myself with is this idea that people overestimate what they can do in 6 months, but underestimate
mm,
what they can do in 10 years, which
mm.
is typically, I think, attributed to Bill Gates. Although whether he's the first person who said it or not, I don't know. And I think that has been part of the certainly the psychological juggling to this is like I feel like I'm not making enough progress day to day, week to week, month to month, but trying to sort of zoom out and take that long view and go, actually, the gains will compound over time. If I can get slightly better each day or slightly better each week, I have a
Mm.
runway where hopefully those improvements will aggregate enough to at least get me to a position where this seems achievable once the time frame or the deadline, as it were, kind of comes into view a bit more closely.
I think that's true. And, to Andy's point, and also Joel, to your point, like small goals don't inspire people.
Mm,
This is
exactly.
certainly one of the lessons I've learned through my business career is that like a big, bold vision hooks people in and it gets the juices flowing, it gets you inspired. And I think that's a good thing. If you'd taken up the game, I mean, just play this one out. You take up the game, you get given the lessons, you turn up, you flush one, you think I could potentially be the next Tiger Woods, but I'm gonna ease up on this, and I'm gonna set myself a goal. I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna tell my partner, you don't know what you've just unleashed. I think I'm gonna set the lifetime goal of running fifth in a C grade club competition at some point.
I mean, at the moment, fifth in a club competition would be an improvement. So maybe I should have set that as at least a goal along the way. But
But
I
I
think you're
just
right.
don't think it's got the same ring to it, like it's not
No,
going to get anyone
exactly.
pumped.
And I think, to be clear, like it's not a novelty goal. I haven't just set the goal just for the blog because it's a good hook. It is a legitimate goal, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's more inspiring. It's a better story, but it's also more inspiring to me. And as I say, like
Yeah.
if I work towards this and fall short, I'll have still become a hell of a lot better golfer than if I'd said I want to be a single figure handicapper or even a scratch handicapper. And those are like noble, very difficult goals. But I know that I will get further along this path if I go, the destination's way up here. You got to chase it as hard as you can. And we'll see where we land when I'm approaching 50.
Yeah. And look, we can tell you from experience that approaching 50 is a great place to be. And it's probably where you're going to play your best
E-
golf. So,
Even the other side of 50, it's
yeah.
it's a great place to be.
So there's certainly a lot to look forward to. And it is also amazing what happens with a little bit of focus and a little bit of just consistent effort. And the other thing, though, that probably worth that we often talk about is that, unfortunately and frustratingly, improvement in golf is not a linear process.
Mm.
You kind of
Mm.
alluded to that a little bit about the level of effort that you put in doesn't necessarily come back at you with the results, and that's a fact. It should over time, you would think, if you're doing the right things, but it definitely doesn't happen that, like I'm a 20 handicapper today, I'll practice, I'll be 19, 18, 17, 16 and go down all the way. Um, it fluctuates. You go up and down, you have good days and bad days. So, with that in mind, how has the progress been so far? Because we're
Mm.
a year or so in. What have you found so far?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, it couldn't really be less linear. It's slightly hysterical in terms of like the good and the bad coming so close together. Sometimes it's ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, again, the part of the whole enterprise is I said I was going to lay things bare for people on the blog and with you guys and stuff like that. So my first round, I shot 114, which, I don't think is great, but it's not the worst score anyone's ever put on down for their first ever round of golf.
True.
But the progress was pretty quick. I broke 100, I think, round three, and then I broke 90 a couple of months later. But then it was like a violent swing back into three figures. I've had some very low rounds. Well, had some very low rounds for someone who's been golfing a year. I've shot a couple of 80s, which was good. I haven't broken the 80
Good.
mark yet. But a bunch of low 80s in the last month or so. But as I say, I can step out one day and shoot an 80 or an 81 and step out the next day and shoot the high 90s or maybe even 100 still these days. So it's pretty hysterical. I think the amount of effort I'm putting in doesn't seem to correlate with whether I shoot a good round or a bad round. I think I've tried to look at this, and look at other avenues of, people trying to get really good at things and mastery. And as you say, golf isn't linear. And I don't think many things are really. I think there's a sort of sawtooth effect where you make a load of progress, but it kinks down again. But the level it goes down to is higher than your previous low or your
Mm.
previous plateau. Again, this is something I'm definitely telling myself to try and give myself comfort in those darker days. I do think I've made a good amount of progress. I've played quite a lot of golf. I'm putting in a lot of time. The weather has suddenly turned here in the UK. I just got a message before we came on saying the course is closed, which is exactly what you want to hear
Uh,
before October's even rolled around. So, how much course time I'll get in the next few months, I don't know. But yeah, there's been a good amount of rounds, a good amount of practice. I'm having lessons. I think possibly, and this is one of the challenges I'm facing or I'm finding, I may be trying to do too much too quickly, and I may be taking in too much information at this point. I've learned a lot about the golf swing, about golf psychology, about impact laws, and all of these things. And I think part of the problem at the moment when I'm playing badly is I'm trying to hold 12 swing thoughts, 4,000 ideas about the physics of the ball flight, trying to tell myself what I need to do psychologically. And it's all just an absolute jumble. And I think those are the days when I can't get it around as I would like to. The days where, for whatever reason, the mind is more still, I'm not really thinking about much. And I know, anyone who's played golf for any length of time knows this to be true, but you can't really tell yourself not to think about things. It doesn't really work like that.
Mm.
So those are definitely some of the issues I'm having. And I think the one of the biggest struggles I've got is with that variance, that level of swing from good to bad is so wide in golf, and particularly for a novice golfer. I mean, I know, I listen to the podcast. I know you guys have had good rounds and bad over the recent months, but I think
That's a
my
fact.
my gap is so wide, and it's so painful to go out and shoot a really good number and then a really bad number and not really know why, or not be able to like bring that upper bound down a bit. I think that's the thing I'm really struggling with at the moment. So it's humbling, that's for sure.
mm,
But what I'm trying to focus on at the moment is kind of constraining my range a bit more in terms of the good scores and the bad scores, but also, as I say, a little bit just trying to clear the mind out a bit. And that is like it's so much easier said than done, but I know I have to do it because I am just swimming in information and thoughts at the moment, whether it's technical, whether it's mental, whatever it is. There's a lot going on every time I step over a golf ball at the moment.
Yeah, but I mean that's golf though, isn't it? Like there's a lot of stuff out there when it comes to golf. You could spend all day, whether it be on YouTube or reading information, listening to podcasts where you can get into that paralysis by analysis mindset. But and this what wasn't really a concept when I was trying to play pro golf in the 90s, but being able to swing athletically, which is just sort of letting it happen and not actually. I mean, when you're on the practice fairway and you're trying to improve your swing, it's a different story. But when you're out in the golf course, just trying to let go of all of those swing thoughts. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do at the moment is to be more athletic when I swing. And it's more of a swing feel rather than having any technical swing thoughts as such. So, and I'm finding that to be certainly a lot better than what trying to be in 12 different positions at once.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again that's something that I've found has been really different with golf to anything else I've done before sports wise is that like I never thought about any of that stuff before. I used to I'm not some sort of sporting prodigy who played anything at a particularly high level, but I played a bit of everything and I played football until kind of my mid 30s. I played football for 25 years or whatever it was. I never once thought about the level of like flexion in my ankle or, the
Mm,
exact angle at which I had to land my plant foot when I
Exactly.
was taking a shot. I
Yeah.
never thought about it.
Mm.
Didn't even used to practice in any really structured way. I just go and play football and kind of got better at it over time. And golf doesn't seem to want you to do that. And I know you can, but there's so much to learn. And because the margins are so microscopically fine. Like we do have to learn a certain amount of technical, golf swing mechanics and things like that. But trying to then push those out of your head when you step on a tee box is so difficult. And so I am finding that difference in like how one goes about progress or the amount of things that have to be thought about because you're standing statically over a golf ball. You're not reacting to other players on a football pitch or a ball that's been bowled at your pads, and it's just like you can stand there for effectively as long as you want or until your playing partners get pissed off with you to get like you hit the shot. So it's one of those things where it's so different to what I've done before, and getting comfortable with it. And as you say, being able to feel like an athlete in those moments, or just trust that the practice is going to show up, or just trust that kind of your body knows what you're trying to do. You don't need to overthink it. Is it's something I'm really struggling with at the moment, and I've not played good golf recently. I had a very good August and then a very bad September, and I know that part of it is that I'm not as able to pack those thoughts away. I'm not as able to trust my swing, such as it is. And I'm not saying it's great, but like when it's going well, I don't really think about it and I can swing freely. And I get to that point where there's like a lot of tension, it all gets very steery, and then nothing good happens, and the rounds just
Mm.
get away from you from there at the moment.
so much in all of that to unpack. It's not
Yeah.
funny. Where do we start? Oh, I love it because like this is just the story of every single one of us on the golf course every weekend. You know exactly what you're talking about, and it's all there. Um, the concept of that variability between good rounds and bad rounds. I was just thinking about that when you were talking about it, and you've got good rounds and bad rounds. You've got um, you've right down to good holes and bad holes, but right down to good shots and bad shots, which is obviously the culmination of all those shots added up is going to be a good hole, good round, bad round. So, the reason that I talk about it like that is it starts to bring it back to process thinking rather than outcome thinking. And I feel like something sitting just slightly behind your story there is that your expectations have shifted about what you think that you should be delivering on the golf course week in, week out.
Yeah.
What was a good round 6 or 12 months ago and an acceptable score, that jubilation of breaking 100 for the first time, that's gone now because you've done it. Like now you expect to do it. And if you don't do it, it's disappointing. So I think there's a piece there around that whole expectation might be moving ahead of the way that the results are potentially moving, that's building the frustration, that's building the tension, and all those other things as well that you talk about.
Yeah, 100%. And it was, the breaking 100 was great and came very early, and the breaking 90 came way too early. I mean, it was a total outlier round where it was like I shot an 85 out of nowhere, but then went out and was straight back in the mid 90s. And I think, yeah, exactly that. I mean, you guys talk about this a bit, but by definition, your best rounds don't happen very often, right? And almost every round you ever play is not going to be your best round, and I know that, but I'm trying to accept the variance as best I can. And I think what's happened is I feel like I've gotten better, but the scores don't necessarily reflect that day to day. Some days they do, and a lot of days they don't. And that's what I'm finding difficult, is to trust whether I have gotten better or not when I've come off a bad round. And whether I'm a better ball striker or putter or whatever it might be after I've shot a score that I'm not happy with is very, very difficult. And it can kind of send you back into that dark place of questioning what you're doing. Is the
Oh
is the
yeah.
practice plan right? Is the progression there? Am I a madman for setting out on this course? Possibly yes. But the exact opposite happens on a good day, right? As I said, I had several good rounds in a row at the start of August, which made me really believe that I could do this. I am definitely not good right now at taking each shot as it comes. And as you say, I know the
Mhm.
rounds are clearly a culmination of the amount of shots you take, but I have a constant mental scorecard going. I could tell you in any second of any round of golf I play how many over par I am or where I'm standing and whatever. And that is proving very, very difficult for me to then just play free golf. And the other week I had a very, very good chance to break 80 for the first time, but all I was doing was just counting what I need to do, from here on in. I got
Yeah,
five
yeah,
holes
yeah,
left,
yeah.
4 holes left. And
I've been there.
oh,
I've been there.
yeah, shock horror. I then like rope hooked two into the trees on the last 2 holes and shot an 80 and big heartbreak. So the things that people talk about, I know you guys spoke to Josh Nichols and John Sherman and people like that, and they're right, and they know a lot more about golf than I do. But knowing that that's right and that's a mindset I have to take, and being able to inhabit that mindset when I'm actually on the golf course, are two different things. And I think I'm inching myself in that direction, but it's certainly somewhere where there's big, big progress that needs to be made. And as much as having the swing lessons and stuff is fundamental, I know that ultimately I'm going to have to get past that point of acceptance and real acceptance, not sort of BS. I'm telling myself I'm accepting the outcomes, but I know I'm not really. I have to somehow try and find that level of like real acceptance, whereby I can swing more freely and actually be okay with what happens. Because I think you mentioned this previously, but the brain knows if you're trying to con it, right? And I can say to
Sure.
myself, I don't care where this tee shot goes, but I really do. So like I've got a long way to go in all of this, but I certainly know that mental side of things is something that I need to put some focus on, because it is holding me back at the moment.
But if
All
if
right.
you look at and you're talking about variance for a couple of moments, even the PGA Tour guys, they can shoot 62 on one
Mm.
day, and then they could potentially shoot, 77 on another day, which is a 15 shot variance for guys who, I mean,
Do it
they're
for a
doing
living.
it for
They're the best in the world.
8 hours a day. That is their life. That's all they're doing. They don't have jobs and other things that are taking up their time. Well, they've got a lot of other stuff taking up their time, but they're doing that for a living. So, say even for, the average golfer, say you've got a 20 shot variance. I mean, you mentioned you shot 80 not long ago. A 20 shot variance between your best at 80 and the other side of that is 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if the PGA Tour guys have got a 15 shot
Mm.
variance, I think it's something that you just need to accept within yourself that you're going to have that variance as well. And the other thing as well is that this, it's a step in the journey. Each round is just a small step in the journey. I mean, Steve's had the experience of breaking 80 for the first time. I mean, you probably listened and to my sort of subpar round that I had back in April, but preceding that was a number of rounds where I was subpar, and then I bogeyed a few holes coming in to shoot over par. So it's a step in the journey, and to keep putting yourself out there and to keep improving, which you're doing, which is a great thing, means you'll eventually get there.
Yeah, that is certainly the hope. I think, yeah, the variance thing is hard to accept. I think what has really helped with all of this, and it's something that I know that John Sherman's talks about a lot, and Foundations of Golf has really helped me with it, is the statistical proof of things that we as
Mm,
golfers get completely out of whack in terms
Mm.
of what we expect of ourselves. And it really has helped me to learn what the make percentage is on tour from 8 foot or whatever, or how many fairways are missed, or how many greens are missed from 150 yards. That actually does help, because it really has helped me take my frustration levels down a bit with myself when I miss a green from 150 yards and I'm living with myself. And then you go, but actually, even scratch golfers would miss this amount of the time. Someone of your level, should be glad if you can get it near the green. That kind of thing does really help. So I have been finding that a source of solace. As you say, the variance of PGA Tour players is similar in terms of from low to high. Obviously, I prefer my variance to be in that range, but we'll come to that.
we all would. We all would.
Yeah, and again, it's clearly a universal thing, right? I obviously, you guys have had some good rounds and bad rounds, and listen to Chasing Scratch podcast as well, and there's
Yeah.
been a lot of times there when it looked like some of those level par rounds were going to happen, and they didn't. So I know we all go through this, and it's just my isolated version of this shared experience that we all have, and that's why I wanted to reach out. I mean, listening to the first or second episode you guys did, it was like listening to my own internal monologue at one point where you were talking
I
about,
feel
and
sorry for you. That's a scary thought.
just to circle back to like the why do this, part of
Yeah.
it really was what you guys talked about, which was just not wanting to sort of go meekly into, I know I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to call myself middle-aged, but not wanting to sort of go into that,
Yeah.
just accepting. I'm not saying for a minute my life isn't fine and is mediocre or whatever, but just not wanting to kind of just go, everything's fine. I'll just let it lie now. Wanting to actually strive for something and feel like I had a pursuit outside of family and outside of career that I could really get my teeth stuck into. And I think it really did hit home. You guys, put it in your own words, but that felt very, very close to something that I'd been thinking about and talking about, with my partner. And now apparently I just tell anyone who wants to know what I'm up to. So I think, yeah, it's clearly something that a lot of us feel and a lot of us want to pursue. I may have taken it to some sort of ridiculous extreme, but it's a shared sentiment, right? And it's why you guys do it, and it's why some of those other podcasts out there or golfers out there pursue similar goals, whether it's scratch or whatever it might be. There's something about this game and something about not every golfer, because I know golfers who can just go out, knock it around, go home, not think about it again, do the same the next week. I don't know how they do that, but I hear that people can do it. But there's obviously a thread in both the sport and the people who get really into it, which attracts this kind of pursuit, I suppose.
Yeah, you're spot on. With all of those things, are spot on. And I think from my point of view, what you're talking about of not wanting to go, walk quietly into the dark of middle age has been a real driver for us. There's that proverbial over the hill concept that we always want to feel like we're still on the right side of that peak and we're still climbing. And I guess for us, part of this is doing that as well, is thinking that I don't want to acknowledge that I'm at a point in my life where the best is behind me. Like I still want to feel like there's potential improvement and there's better days to come. And I feel like that's something that speaks to every bloke of our vintage, and I put our vintage with about a 25-year caveat on it. But I do want to come back to, you were talking about the point where you're on the course, good round, bad round, regardless, but you always know your score and you've got that ticking over in the back of your head. Golf's a really numerical game, and I've had this too, right? Like Andy and I have talked before about the first time when I threatened to break 80, which was on a weekend away that we had at Nelson Bay. And I think I went double something to finish with an 82. and heartbreak.
Mm. And
But
I shot 79 on that day, just
it just
quietly.
rubbed it right in the clubhouse afterwards. But the point with it was you can't just go, I'm not going to think about anything, and
Mm.
I'm going to kind of try and keep a clear mind, because your brain won't let you do it. The best lesson I reckon that I learned was during this during the show was actually the episode. I think it was episode 12 where we had Neil Smith. It was our first kind of mental guru on the show, and he gave me this challenge of keeping a mental scorecard. So when I went out in the next round, every single shot you're writing down, and you could do it either yes or no, um, which he suggested do it either yes or no, or rate yourself out of 5 or rate yourself out of 10, whatever works for you. I liked it as yes or no because it was just kind of, it was good or bad. And that was about having the process going for every single shot. Am I going to make a decision about the shot I want to hit? So I'm not just going to go up there and hit and hope. I'm going to make a decision about what I want to do. And then am I going to commit to the execution of that shot? And then am I going to accept the result? So it's just 3 elements. And I've got to do that for the shot to mark myself a yes. And if I miss one of those 3 elements or more, then it's a no. And what that did is that gave me a scorecard in my head to keep track of as I was going around the course. And in that round, I actually didn't care about, or I didn't remember, I didn't really think about what my score was. I won't say I didn't care about it because I definitely did, but I wasn't focused on what my score was. I was focused on what my mental scorecard score was. That was
Yeah.
really interesting, and it gave the brain something else to do rather than worrying about the numerical number of shots that I'd had. So
Mm.
I wonder if something like that could help.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if I did that right now, I worry that my mental scorecard would be even uglier than my actual scorecard. But
But
that's kind of the
it's a
point,
starting
right?
point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And I think I do realize sometimes I step up and I hit a shot and I haven't really thought about it at all. I haven't really thought about what I was trying to do. I haven't gone through my pre-shot routine. And lo and behold, it's been a terrible shot. What a surprise. The
Mm.
bit of that I'd struggle with is the third part, which is like, am I accepting the result of the shot I've hit? But absolutely, I think both as a focus point to remind myself to do that, but also to get my head out of the space of just, counting strokes or whatever. I think I do need to do something like that. I think I had two interesting counterpoints quite close together around that. One was being in that position and just being scared. All I was doing was trying not to mess up.
Mhm.
And then a couple of weeks later, something similar happened, and I ended up shooting the exact same score. But actually, I took it as a challenge. I was a couple of shots worse off than I had been before, but I thought I'm going to just try and get as low as possible rather than not try and go above a certain limiter. And I
Yep. Spot
found
on.
that made my approach not that I was like firing at pins or taking more aggressive shots on, but I was just swinging with much more confidence and much more intent. And rather than getting tense and rather than getting scared, I was trying to sort of tackle it from a positive perspective rather than a fear perspective. And that was quite eye-opening. It's not necessarily something I've been able to replicate a huge amount, but I think when I've been able to embrace that as a challenge rather than, I'm trying to stay away from the bad thing, i.e., not breaking 80 or whatever it might be, but trying to challenge myself to just go as low as possible or whatever it might be. It's just more enjoyable for a start because you don't spend the last 6 holes terrified of a blow up. But it's definitely produced better results. I do think a lot of people mentioned that similar mental scorecard approach. I do think it's something that I need to do as a reminder to myself of the importance of those things. And also, yeah, to focus on something else and know that the score on the scorecard ultimately isn't the only thing to care about day by day. It's not the only measure of improvement, right? Like to your mental scorecard. If your mental scorecard's getting better, if your actual scorecard isn't, you can still come back away from around and go, I improved. I may not have improved to par, but I improved an aspect of my game today, and I can prove it because my mental scorecard's better than it was last week or whatever.
I think you'll definitely notice that the two will move together. I mean, it's not a silver bullet by any stretch, but one of the issues, and particularly when you're talking about having those bad days when the scores say blow out into the 90s potentially, is it's usually a case that there's either a few blow up holes, which we all suffer with from time to time, or there's silly wasted shots, or it might be a combination of the two. And they usually stem from poor decision making, after playing a bad shot, then compounding that with a bad decision. So, like you don't follow up a bad shot with a bad decision is a bit of a cliche that you talked about, but it's so incredibly true. And it's difficult to do when your mind is spinning from the bad shot to slow yourself down and make that good decision. But it's just absolutely critical. I think having that process and having that thinking process, the concept we talk about a bit is the think box, play box by Lynn Marriott and P. Nielsen. Like really divorcing that. I'm thinking about my shot here, and I won't let myself get over the ball until I've committed to a shot. And then when I get over the ball, I'm going to stop thinking about all of those technical things, and I'm just going to focus on executing the shot. It can really help. I don't know, Andy Walker, am I making any sense?
Oh no, perfect sense. We're talking about the think box, play box, and the mental side. Question I was going to ask is, have you looked at the mental golf type at all, Joel?
I haven't. No, I know that that's something that you have been an advocate for, and it does sound interesting. I think at the moment I'm drowning in things to do or improvement plans or books to read or podcasts to listen to. It's on the list certainly. Listening to you talk about it, I have an inkling of what mine might be, but I think probably it's something that I should do. I certainly find myself affected by external factors, not just the shots I've hit, the people around me, the pace of play, what's just happened before I showed up to the course, those kinds of things. Um, and certainly sometimes in ways that seem completely counterintuitive. I find very often a good range session will precede a very bad round of golf and vice versa. And sometimes having no time to prepare and just rolling out the car and running to the first tee, I then end up playing really well, possibly because there's no expectation. So I think possibly investigating that a little bit more formally and trying to understand it would be of value. I guess, and maybe you can fill me in a little bit on what the outcomes of that are. Obviously you've got your mental golf type, but how you then take that information forward. I guess knowledge is power to some extent, but I presume there's something slightly more to it than that in terms of what you then use that knowledge to do or not do when you're out on the course.
Yeah, absolutely. And what it does, it identifies your unique personality traits, and everyone's got them, and it gives you a framework to be able to go out and play golf within this mental framework. Now, just as an example, and Steve and I are complete opposites in that I'm an introvert, Steve's an extrovert. So me being an introvert, it helps me to internalize what I'm doing on the golf course, and I don't talk a lot to my playing partners. I do have a chat when in between shots and all the rest, but if I'm going through a tough period, it helps me to be able to just get inside my little box and just maybe go away from the my playing partners a little bit, just to think through what I'm doing and to process internally what's just happened. Whereas Steve, being an extrovert, he needs to be more social, and it helps him to talk about it and to be vocal about it, even if it's just talking to himself.
That
So
happens.
there's a difference in that process of and that's just the first one, the introvert versus extrovert. So the mental golf type will take you through your four different personality types and gives you a framework to be able to go out and play your mental game according to your particular personality type.
It's actually
Yeah, and
quite
I think
useful because I think, sorry, Joel, just to jump in, you strike me as fitting squarely in my bracket of the extrovert personality type on this one. And I say that because the external stuff affects you.
mm,
It's actually not necessarily just about the fact that you need to talk all the time, you need to get it out there. It's actually about where you draw your energy from. And you're drawing it from the external world around you. Whereas Andy Walker's he needs that quiet time to recharge the batteries and to get in his
uh,
bubble. And
Yeah.
that's why this was the lesson I learned in it. That's why pace of play, playing partners, conversations around you, all these other things actually start to come in and they start to impact. And for me, they really, really do, and they have. Going through the mental golf type work, actually, what I learned is that instead of a strategy of dealing with that, what I always used to do was to try and go, no, don't listen, focus, get back in your zone, do all the things that you kind of generally taught to when you grow up playing sport. It doesn't work because it's still going to get in there. You can't deny it. Um, so the lesson out of it was to go, when you're hearing it and you're on the tee box and you're hearing the chatter behind, and you don't want to be that guy that backs off the ball and says, hey guys, can you please be quiet? Um,
Mm.
so you hit the shot anyway, and you hit a bad shot, and then you get cranky because you're worried about them, but then you don't want to be overtly cranky because you don't want to be that guy again. And it just snowballs, right? Like we've all been there. But it's actually in that situation going, no, no, this is my personality type. I understand that's why I'm hearing that, but it doesn't mean that it has to have an impact. This is
Mm.
about me. This is not about them. I'm just going to let that sit there and wash over and refocus myself on the shot. But I'm not trying to block it out because I know I can't. I'm just accepting that that's me, and,
Yeah.
and I'm hearing that, and that just that subtle little difference that changed the world for me when I was playing with people who were kind of doing things that was getting my goat just a little bit.
That's really interesting because my instinct was the opposite, was that I would be on the introvert side of things. And maybe I am, I don't know. I will do it because just hearing you talk about it has made me think actually I don't really have a clue. But all of those things you just said, once again, is like listening to my inner monologue in terms of people are chatting on the tee box. I don't want to say anything. I'm annoyed, but I'm just going to keep it in, etc., etc. I mean, that happens all the time. I think one of the things I love about golf is it's a social sport. And one of the things I hate about golf is that it's always a social sport and someone always wants to talk to you and someone always wants to have a word. And sometimes I don't want that. Sometimes I just want to play golf. But if you show up, with your buddies, you can't not chat, right? And sometimes I'm not in the mood. I just want to focus. But I find the energy of my playing partners, for better or worse, but usually for worse, does really have an effect on my mindset. And there's some people who I try to avoid playing with because I just find I guess their personality type and mine, they don't seem to mesh well on the golf course. They're sort of very chaotic and all over the place. And I like to be a bit more kind of methodical and take my time and stuff like that. And I suppose part of this and part of the pursuit, I'm going to need to just get better at dealing with whatever that might be. I've been paired up with some complete strangers in tournaments, and sometimes it's gone well, and sometimes it's gone badly. And competitive golf is like that inherently. And I guess I just need to be able to take the rough with the smooth for better or worse, because if those external factors are playing too much of a part, I'm just going to be hamstrung and only be able to play well when everything around me is perfect, and that basically never happens. But it's certainly not going to happen enough to allow me to make enough progress towards this goal of mine. So yeah, I think you've probably sold me on it now. I had thought about it before, but just hearing kind of those two sides of the coin actually makes it come home a bit more that probably is something I need to have a better understanding of so that I can ride the waves, of those external factors better round by round.
And I certainly think if you're going to be playing competitive golf, there's going to be a lot of things that are outside of your control and outside of your influence, mainly being your playing partners. And other things that are happening on the golf course, and certainly if you're going to start playing on the Legends Tour, there's going to be crowds, there's going to be people around. I mean, even club championships. People come out to watch club championships. So those external factors, you're going to have to accept and have a process to be able to deal with them. And that's where I found that mental golf type has provided a really strong framework for me to deal with those. I mean, yeah, I don't I can socialize, but on the golf course, but I really like to internalize where I'm at and be in my own space in my own head, especially when I'm walking up to the golf ball. So that's one of my focuses is that, yeah, I'll be social walking down the fairway, but the closer I get to my golf ball, the more I back away from my playing partners.
Mm.
So yeah, so I think that's going to be really important as you and competition is amazing. It teaches you so much about yourself. So I encourage you to play more and more competition as much as you can. But you're just going to have a framework to be able to deal with those external factors that you can't control.
Yeah, and I'm finding that. I mean, I've put myself into quite a lot of competitive scenarios this year already, which has been very interesting. As I said before, I played team sport for a long time, but never played anything individually.
Mm.
Obviously, never been a member of a golf club before. Didn't even know how golf competitions worked, really. I mean, obviously the scoring, but in terms of like the formats and stuff like that, all new to that. But this year, joined a club and tried to sort of throw myself into competition straight away. And it has been interesting. I think it's been a mixed bag, obviously in terms of results, but that's fine. But in terms of how I felt about it psychologically as well, I found it's varied hugely. Some days I've gone in feeling very energized and like the moment and the occasion has actually fueled me to play well, and I've kind of stepped up to it and gone, I'm going to embrace this challenge. And sometimes the exact opposite has happened, unfortunately, and I've sort of just crumbled under the pressure, and I think probably set my expectations too high. We had our club championships at the end of August, and it was just off the back of a few weeks of really good golf. I mean, the best golf I've ever played consistently for about a fortnight. And then the club championships came up about 10 days after that, just long enough away for me to have a couple of really bad rounds and start questioning everything I was doing.
It's
But
time for a swing change at that point as well.
yeah, it wasn't it just.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, our club championships work. There's a sort of the club championships, but there's also the 15 and above bracket for handicaps, which I unfortunately still fall into. But all, friends and playing partners were all giving it that I was, the favorite for that because I've been playing so well. And I went in feeling pretty good. And it was a 2-day event. And the first day went quite well. I think I was a few shots back of the lead, or so I thought, until someone posted some ludicrous score after day one. But still fine. Felt good. Felt competitive. Felt calm the second day. First tee, duck hooked one into the road on the side of the course, out of bounds. Took an 8. Day was gone. And it was certainly one of those things, like you say, it's the day where people come out and watch. You're paired with someone you never met before. There's pressure. It was, pure unadulterated stroke play, no pickups, no, I'll just take a 0 and move on.
Yeah.
It was, if you really mess this hole up, you could be taking a 15.
Yeah.
And someone I know did take a 15 actually on one of the holes. And that level of scrutiny and pressure, admittedly, it's the club championships. It's not, the President's Cup. So it's not exactly that high, but it didn't bring out the best of me at that point. And I've had a couple of times when it's been different. Won a couple of comps earlier in the year, which was great. But that was the biggest one. That didn't go so well. And then I played last week in a pairs competition over at Celtic Manor, and again, it was a relatively big thing. I think it was 100 pairs of golfers and people on the first tee and a starter reading out your name and things like that. And that didn't go well either. So there's clearly work to be done. I mean, factors outside of my control completely. One of them at the moment being which way the ball's going to go off the tee. So I need to get that sort of sorted out. But I don't want to shy away from it. I don't want to have a bad experience and go, I didn't like that. It was uncomfortable. So much of this is uncomfortable. And actually, part of the reason to document the journey was to lean into the discomfort. It's all going to be uncomfortable. It's all hard. It made me uncomfortable writing the blog. Certainly putting on the blog what the goal was, that made me uncomfortable. Sending it in an email to you guys who have listened to the podcast, we never met, telling strangers made me uncomfortable. Now this is going to go out to whatever it is, 39 countries you guys are in. It makes me
Hundreds
uncomfortable.
of thousands of people. Hundreds of
100%.
thousands. Yeah.
But that's good, right? I think that's got to be good. And if I do get even closer to the goal, that level of discomfort's only going to get higher. And so I just need to be okay with it. I think I just need to try and embrace it and try and get more comfortable in the discomfort as I go. Because ultimately, yeah, it's not going to get any easier from here. So I've been trying to do the competitions. I'm going to keep trying to do it, as weather allows. But certainly there's a ton of work to be done in terms of feeling calm and not having that outcome focus and just accepting the inputs of the day, but also the outcomes at the end of the day. Because ultimately, the worst thing that happens is a bad round of golf, and there's always another one to play, right? So it's really not that big a deal in the end.
And that is a very, very wise quote. And we're nudging the hour mark, Joel. So I know we've kept you from starting your day. I just don't know that we're going to find a better kind of a segue to wrap up the conversation than that quote that you've just offered. So with that in mind, I've loved this conversation. It's been fantastic. It's so nice to hear that our story actually resonates with somebody else somewhere around the world. And by the way, 41 countries we're in at the moment and rising. But it is awesome to hear that you've gotten something out of it, and that some people out there actually get something out of it. And I have no doubt that plenty of people are going to get a lot out of your journey and your blog. So now's the chance to point people in the direction of your blog so that they can follow your journey. I'm sure that there'll be a few people that'll be keen on hearing how things progress for you. So where can they find you, mate?
Yeah, that would be great. So it's golflifecrisis.com is the blog, which seemed like the appropriate name for what I'm going through at the moment. On Instagram at Golf Life Crisis, and the YouTube channel is coming soon because heaven knows I need more people watching what I'm doing and being able
It's
to,
exciting. That is exciting.
have a visual medium for all of this madness that I've embarked on. So yeah, Golf Life Crisis, have a look. Please reach out if anyone wants to chat. Instagram. Would appreciate any comments, even if you just want to tell me that I'm a complete madman and delusional. That's fine. So yeah, would love it if people visited the blog and had a read.
Look,
No, that's
I think
amazing.
that and it's a credit to you for putting yourself out there and leaning into the journey slash pilgrimage. Um, Look, both Steve and I have got really big, hairy, audacious goals, and I mean, one of mine is to play in an Australian Open. I'd love to be able to play in the biggest event in this country, and does that make me a little bit delusional? Yeah, maybe. But
But that's why we play golf, because we're all
look,
delusional.
great things never happen by being realistic.
Yes. Andy Walker.
Love
So,
it.
so a bit of delusion, never
Bit
hurt
of
anyone.
delusion never hurt anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And I am, as I said, this isn't a novelty goal, but hopefully there's some entertainment for people on the way. I'm trying to present it as self-effacingly as I can on the blog, and chronicle the journey openly and transparently, but maybe give people a laugh along the way. So yeah, please visit, please engage, and I'm happy to chat to anyone further about it.
No, it's amazing. I love it. I've been an avid reader since you sent me the link, and I'll continue to follow your journey. And I know plenty of other people will. And I really hope that we get to have this conversation at some point in the future when we say, congratulations, you've qualified for the tour, and Andy Walker's just won an Australian Open. There's so
I didn't
much.
say I've got a goal of winning an Australian Open. I mean, that would be completely delusional, not just a little bit. Playing in an Australian Open, maybe leading amateur. Yeah, maybe.
Sorry, I should say Andy Walker gets on. He reports that he's finished runner-up in an Australian Open to his good mate and podcast co-host.
Yeah, good one. Love it.
So anyway, we've all got a lot to do, but Joel Gregory, mate, awesome to have a chat with you. I don't think this is the last that we're going to hear from you on the show. We're all going to follow your progress, and we wish you the very best. So thank you so much for joining us on the Missing Links Golf Show.
Thanks, guys.
Andy Walker, what a chat that was.
That was pretty amazing. I really enjoyed that. That was one of the more enjoyable chats that we've had. Just, a guy who is just on a similar pilgrimage, which I think a lot of guys are. There's we've mentioned a few times that we seem to hit a note with a lot of people
Mm.
out there, a lot of golfers, and yeah, it's great to hear from someone who just is on that same path.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I just love the fact that, we've been having conversations about golf and life for 25 years now.
Yeah.
And, you know, 50 episodes ago, we decided to start recording them and putting them out to the world because, of course, our conversations will be interesting to everyone else in the world. But, you don't think that for a moment. But the fact that there's numerous other people who hear the stories and hear pilgrimage and go, yeah, that's me. And if we can help anyone along the way, or even just make them realize that there's other people out there that are as crazy as them and are trying to do the same things as them, it's just so cool. Like that
Yeah.
really is an amazing thing. I'm a big fan of it. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
And the whole not going quietly into middle age. I mean that seems to have sort of hit a note with Joel as well. And
Yeah.
that's us. I mean, we don't want to let go of our dreams. We don't want to let go of
Why should you
uh
have to?
yeah, and that's it. That's part of life, isn't it? It's while yes, family is important and work and careers, business is important. There's also other stuff. Those big, hairy, audacious goals that we have that in no way should anyone have to let go of those goals.
No, no. And we won't. I flatly refuse. I won't go down without a fight. We're in
Or
it for
it's
you,
interesting,
Pilgrims.
and I was thinking about this with, especially at the end with Joel, is that he's actually got a tougher road than what we do because we've got each other to keep ourselves
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
accountable.
That is true.
Whereas
That is true.
whereas he's by himself and he's got to keep himself accountable, which
Yeah,
is more difficult if than if you've got an accountability partner. So
yeah.
yeah,
That is a fact.
we'll definitely have to keep in touch with Joel and make sure that we hold him accountable as well.
I think so. I think I want to follow his story. I want to see where he goes, and I want to see where the improvement goes, and the ups and downs. As we talked about, improvement's not linear. He's going to have good days. He's going to have bad days, and
Yeah,
he'll see the handicap go down. He'll see the handicap go back up. It's just like everybody else. But hopefully that velocity, that trend line, continues in the right direction. But really super nice guy. We genuinely wish him the very best in his personal pilgrimage, and love the fact that he's on board with the broader Missing Links Golf Show pilgrimage.
yep,
And yeah, if we can help in any way, we're there. We're all
yeah.
over it.
And would love to see him out here to play some of our fantastic golf courses here in Australia and the reverse as well. Would love to go
For
to
sure. For sure.
the UK. I mean, we've obviously now got Joel in the Midlands, and then we've got Pilgrims a little bit further north in Ireland to go and visit. So yeah, we're
We
definitely going to
do.
have to put that on the map on the road or
Yeah.
the road the pilgrimage road map.
We've got to go to the Midlands. We've got to go to Northern Ireland or the northern corner of Ireland. We've got
Mm,
to go to Georgia. We've got to get up to Ontario.
yep.
Geez, frequent flyer points, Andy Walker.
Yeah.
They're going to be coming
Yeah.
thick and fast. But nice work. It was a lot of fun. And Pilgrims, please help a fellow pilgrim out. Get on his blog, have a read. I think you'll enjoy it. It's
Mm,
nicely written, a fair bit of humor in there. Well worth checking out. And all the
yep.
links will be in the show notes. So, Joel, thanks for sharing your story. We'll keep in touch. And I think, Andy Walker, that probably means there's really only one thing left to do.
Rock out, pilgrims.